What's up, guys? Welcome back. Paul from Sklar Fit. Today I'm going to show you one of the most controversial exercises in the fitness world today. It's an exercise that has a tremendous amount of muscular recruitment, and it's one of the most functional exercises that you can do. The deadlift has been around in the bodybuilding and performance industry ever since I was a kid, and it's one of the main reasons that I'm able to do everything that I can today. It's an exercise that recruits every single muscle in the posterior chain, and the posterior chain is every single muscle from your neck all the way down to your heels. Some say that the risks are not worth the rewards, but I'm here today to show you how you can limit those risks and achieve perfect deadlift form. I herniated 2 discs from cycling when I was 40 years old, and I turned to the deadlift to strengthen my lower back. For me, the deadlift has been a godsend. I worked my way up slowly but surely with different variations of the deadlift until I was able to achieve the barbell version. And in that process, I made my lower back bulletproof. Time and time again, you will see as you get older that it is not the excess movement that kills you. It's the lack of movement that kills you. Now, let's dial in that form. Let's go. Quickly, before we get started, I want to say a big special thank you to Transparent Labs for sponsoring this video. I've been using Transparent Labs for more than 2 years, and the reason that I use them is because they have clean products. No artificial sweeteners, flavors, or colors. There are no fillers. There's a very short ingredient list on all of their products. The 3 products that I use the most are the 100% grass-fed whey protein isolate, creatine with HMB, and BCAAs with HMB. All right, without further ado, let's get out of the office, get onto the exercise floor. I'm gonna show you how I deadlift. Let's go. Now, there are 4 critical mistakes that I see people make when they approach the deadlift. Number 1, improper setup and start position. Number 2, rounding of the lumbar spine. Number 3, letting the bar get out in front of the body. And number 4, letting the hips rise before the chest. So I'm gonna show you my setup and how I approach the deadlift mentally and physically. So the first thing is addressing the bar. I step up to the bar, and I wanna have the bar basically right on my shins. And this goes into one of the mistakes that people make. They let the bar get out in front of them like this, and then they try to lift from this position, and you can already see that I'm rounding my back in that position. So as soon as you get up to the bar, the knees bend, the back is in a nice neutral position. I'm not arched and I'm not rounded. I'm in a nice relaxed position. So bar at my shins, I have my feet about 8 to 10 inches apart. That is personal preference. Some people like them wider, some people like them closer. See what works best for you. I have my arms at my side. I reach down to the bar. Now again, with the straps, I want to get strapped in nice and tight. If you're not using straps at this point, you're just gripping the bar. And what you want to make sure that you do is pull slack out of the bar. So I'm screwing my shoulders into my torso. I'm driving weight into my legs. So I've got my hamstrings and my glutes contracted nice and tight as I pull the slack out of the bar into my legs and into my upper back. I've got a slight gaze forward, and I want to lift high with my chest, push the floor away with my feet, and pull at the same time to full extension. I don't want to be all the way back like this because that puts a ton of stress on my back. I want to be in a nice neutral position. I do not like dropping the barbell. I like to be able to control it. When you pass the barbell below the knees, you want to make sure that you don't hinge at the waist like this. You want to make sure that your knees bend and your whole body comes down as one unit instead of 2 separate units. So we're gripping the floor with our feet, and that increases tension in the posterior chain, in the hamstrings and in the glutes. So I'm gonna screw my feet into the floor, grip it. I'm gonna stretch the floor out left and right. Straighten my arms. I wanna go with nice long arms, chest nice and high, drive and stand. Now, the key is that as you increase weight, you have to make sure that you can maintain proper form. And that's one of the bigger mistakes that I see, people using more weight than they can handle, and their form completely goes to pot. So when I approach the bar, to make sure that my lower back is not rounded, I have to make sure that I screw my arms in, and I keep the chest nice and high. Long, straight arms. I don't want to just pull with my upper body, I want to pull with my entire body. So it's a push from the legs, a pull from the upper back, and then stand up nice and tall. So during my lift, if I were to let the barbell get away from me and come out in front, all of my body weight will shift forward. All of the tension will go into my lower back. Most likely it will round. If I'm lucky, it won't round, but most likely it will. So once that bar gets away from you and you continue to try to lift, you'll see your hips start to drive up first, and then you may be able to finish the rep, and you may not be able to. So that is a big mistake that people make. You lose tension when the barbell comes forward, tension goes to the lower back, no good, and that's sheer stress in the lower back. You have to make sure that your entire body is working as one kinetic chain, all at the same time with no breaks in the links. Now back to the first mistake, which is improper setup and then letting the hips come up too high first. So if I'm not set up properly and I'm in position here, right now my shoulders are almost lower than my hips, and a lot of people will set up like this forward with the shoulders lower than the hips. Huge mistake. If I set up like that and the weight's either too heavy or my form is wrong and my hips pop up first and then I try to lift, it's either not gonna happen or I'm gonna blow my lower back out, one or the other. So make sure that your setup is immaculate. I'm not squatting down, I'm hinging down. So there's a hinge with bend in the knees. Not a hinge like this, a hinge with a bend in the knees. Another mistake that people make, aside from the critical four, is that they try to squat the deadlift. And they try to squat down in this position, get way too low, and then I'm trying to basically squat the weight up rather than pull it up. So in a nutshell, if you're looking at proper setup, there should be slight bend in the knees, all the way to the hips. There should be a hinge, and just enough hinge to be able to grab the bar and pull slack out of it, keeping the low back in a nice neutral position as opposed to round. And you can see as soon as I round, my legs start to straighten out. So as long as the knees stay bent like that, I really can't round. As long as I'm using my legs, driving through my low back, my glutes, and my upper back. So the biggest visual mistake you will see is a rounded back, whether it be a rounded lower back or a rounded upper back. And that comes from improper setup and improper technique. So if the lumbar and sacrum round, you are in a very vulnerable position, disc-wise. It is a perfect way to completely blow your discs out, and I see it a lot. So that comes again from the improper setup. Too much weight, hips come high, pelvis tilts, and if the pelvis tilts, you can see I'm in discomfort in this position. Pelvic tilts, I've got stress all across my sacrum, L5, S1, and that is where I'm gonna get into gigantic trouble if I don't correct it. So if you start a lift and you've already got that round, stop, reset, get into good position, and make sure that the form is immaculate. Now before I end this quick tutorial, I wanna show you what happens when you add significant weight. So I've got 225 pounds on the bar. You saw what a rep looked like there. Pretty simple. I'm gonna add another 2 plates on each side. We'll make it 405 pounds, and we'll see if the form is the same. The key with all of these exercises, the form has to be able to be replicated no matter how light or how heavy the weight is. Now before I hit the 405 pounds, I wanna answer a question that a lot of you have asked. What type of shoe is best for a deadlift? And I'm gonna tell you, it's personal preference. I typically will lift in anything. I don't really care about the shoe. However, there are shoes that are not best for deadlifting, like running shoes, anything with an elevated heel that pushes you downhill. So I prefer a relatively flat shoe. A barefoot shoe is fine. I gotta be honest, the barefoot shoes that I have look awful, so I rarely wear them. A lot of people like to deadlift barefoot. That's great too. I've got on a nice training shoe that's got a nice flat midsole, so it works perfectly well for me. All right, now before I set up for a technically challenging lift like this is a relatively heavy weight for me. I've done it many times before, but it's always different. So I'm gonna make sure that I'm mentally focused at the same time. If you're using straps like I am now, if you don't want straps, you can use an offset grip as well. That means one palm forward, one palm back, or you can do it the opposite way. Typically, a double overhand grip gives you a more symmetrical lift, less chance of biceps tears as you have with an offset grip. So, especially because of my finger, I'm gonna make sure that I am really cinched in tight. Because every time this splint falls off, I start back to zero, and I've already been wearing it almost 6 weeks. So, right now you can see my back is rounded. I'm relaxed in this position. I'm gonna set into my legs, pull slack out of the bar, gaze slightly ahead, and drive the floor away from me. So it's heavy, but it's manageable. Always keeping the hips down. Try one more rep. Again, you see when I drop the weight down, my entire body comes down at the same time. I know it's a difficult rep, I know it's a difficult weight, but I stay relaxed in my mind, and rather than have all of this craziness in my brain, I take that energy and I focus it directly into my body so that I can transfer it into the weight. Whew, that was tough. That was only 5 reps at 405. My heart is racing. My heart rate's running somewhere between 170 and 175, and that's where the cardiovascular, the conditioning component comes in. Now, before I forget, another question that I get asked all the time is, do I use a weightlifting belt? The answer is no, I don't use a weightlifting belt. I never have. I've never been comfortable with the feeling, and I personally like to feel my entire core work during the lift. If I were to put a belt on, and this is for me, not for everyone, I might feel like I could lift more than my body's able to tolerate and then possibly end up injuring myself. So I like to use no belt. I like to feel my own core. My personal opinion, it develops your entire core strength better than relying on a belt. The old joke is, if someone's pinned underneath the car and you run over to help them, do you have to run and go get your belt before you can lift that car off of them? Now, the same can be said for the lifting straps that I used. If someone's underneath the car pinned and I go over there and I go, you know what, I can't lift that until I get my lifting straps. Well, so be it. I should be able to do it. Sheer strength outweighs the necessity for a belt. Now, when you're looking at guys that are lifting ridiculous amounts of weight, I'm talking about professionals like Thor Bjornsson. Guy is the best deadlifter on the planet. It's unbelievable to watch this guy lift. Never seen anything like it in my life. He wears a belt. Now, if I were to be deadlifting between 1,000 and 1,100 pounds, I might want to wear a belt too. So, it is personal preference. What I say doesn't mean it has to work for you. It works for me, and I challenge you to make sure that you choose things that work best for you. If you enjoyed this video as much as I did, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all the next time. Let's go.